Some countries are insanely strict and have the most severe laws when it comes to drug offenses. Using illegal drugs in any foreign country almost certainly comes with its own set of potential risks. In this video, we've picked up the top 10 toughest countries with the death penalty for drug offenses. So, if you happen to visit any of the places on this list, do yourself a favor and try to avoid getting high for once in your life. It'll probably save it. Alright, let's get started. Number 10. North Korea. Despite a Vice report from 2013 stating that marijuana is essentially legal in North Korea, according to a more recent post from The Guardian, publicly smoking weed in the Hermit Nation can technically get you executed, although such punishment is rarely implemented. North Korea has had a strange love affair with drugs over the decades, until recently the government made, shipped, and sold its very own brand of crystal meth. So Kim Jong-il was pretty much just a chubbier, less fictional version of Walter White, and under his ruling, the country produced so much meth that it was commonplace for citizens to offer it to guests as a stimulant, much like tea or coffee. Number 9. Japan. Most people recognize Japan as one of the richest, most urbanized, and technologically impressive countries in the world. But many might not be aware that Japan also has some of the strictest drug laws. Its pharmaceutical affairs law bans the production and sale of 68 types of drugs. Anti-allergy medicines, decongestants, and over-the-counter painkillers are all deemed as corruptive as heroin and ecstasy. If you accidentally bring some into the country, you could end up going to prison for a long time. Number 8. Vietnam. Compared to its execution-happy neighbors, Vietnam's drug policies might appear somewhat progressive, at least on the surface. Instead of putting them to death, Vietnam puts its drug offenders to work in so-called rehabilitation centers, which is really just their nice way of saying forced labor camp. Addicts detained in these institutions of despair receive no counseling or treatment and have nothing to occupy their time, save for the mind-numbing work they do making products for international companies. If they refuse to work, for whatever reason, they receive physical punishment so cruel that some labor rights charities have equated them to torture. Number 7. China. China is currently the world leader in annual executions, and drug offenders are often the ones being put to death. In accordance with Chinese drug laws, anyone caught trying to smuggle a kilo or more of heroin into the country could face the death penalty, and the same fate could befall anyone found carrying more than 50 grams of other narcotics, including cocaine, opium, and cannabis. The state also gets to conclude whether or not you're a drug addict. If you fail the arbitrary, non-medical drug test, you could be in for a bad trip. Addicts are given no less than 3 years in a prison-like detoxification center. After that, they have to spend a minimum of another 3 years in a compulsory community rehabilitation center, where they're assessed as to whether or not they can be allowed back on the streets unsupervised. Number 6. Iran. Over the past few decades, Iran has publicly executed more than 10,000 drug traffickers and narcotics users as part of the country's war on drugs. In recent years, this policy seems to have been enforced even more strictly, with 650 people being executed by the Iranian government in 2010 alone. Of those, 90% weren't caught with drugs directly, and were put to death merely for drug-related offenses. As punishment is not limited to dealers, those who are caught using or in possession of small amounts of illegal drugs could face a public whipping of up to 70 lashes. Number 5. Singapore. Considering the fact that littering is an offense that can earn you a beating with a cane in Singapore, you can imagine that the authorities of this city-state don't take too kindly to drug offenders. According to Singapore's Central Narcotics Bureau, the Misuse of Drugs Act empowers the police to force suspected drug abusers into drug rehab for a period between 6 and 36 months. The law also mandates that anyone caught leaving a known drug establishment is subject to a police search and could face maximum penalties, which in this case is death. Number 4. Malaysia. Like its neighboring country of Singapore, Malaysia also enforces a mandated death penalty for convicted drug offenders. Only in Malaysia, it takes even less for you to be branded as a drug trafficker. Just 7 ounces of marijuana or half an ounce of heroin is all it takes to put your life in jeopardy. Even if you're caught with less, you'll still be charged a heavy fine and likely incur a lengthy prison sentence. Authorities can also detain anyone for up to 2 weeks on suspicion of drug use and forcibly test them for any traces of illegal drugs in their system. Those who test positive are automatically sentenced to a minimum of 1 year compulsory treatment, even if they're not caught with any drugs on them at the time. Number 3. Saudi Arabia. If you're looking to detoxify, Saudi Arabia might seem like a nice place to go. In strict accordance with Saudi law, visitors to the devout Muslim country are strictly prohibited from bringing in any narcotics, pills, or alcohol, which means you won't find a single bar or liquor store in the entire country. According to the State Department, penalties for the possession, consumption, import, and manufacture of alcohol or any other illegal drugs are extremely severe. Convicted drug users face hefty fines, lengthy jail sentences, public lashings, and/or deportation. Number 2. Indonesia. When arriving in Indonesia, one of the first things you'll probably see at the airport is a cheery sign notifying you that having drugs in your bloodstream could lead to your execution. Needless to say, the country doesn't mess around with its drug laws. Even drug users can face decades in prison or death by firing squad for their actions. And you don't even have to be involved with any drug dealing or drug use to be punished. Parents who fail to report their child's illicit drug use can face steep fines and imprisonment. Number 1. United Arab Emirates. Though the United Arab Emirates is one of the countries that issues capital punishment to drug offenders, you're much less likely to get executed there than in some of the Southeast Asian countries. Oh, but don't let that fool you. Their drug laws are still insanely strict, even if the punishment is somewhat less severe. In fact, there are a multitude of cases where travelers have been arrested for unwittingly bringing trace amounts of illicit drugs into the country. In one instance, a British man was sentenced to 4 years in prison after Dubai customs officials found 0.003 grams of cannabis stuck to his shoe. That's not even enough weed to see with your naked eye, and it probably only got there after he unintentionally stepped on someone's discarded joint on the way to the airport. That wraps up the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. I'll see you next time. Till then, peace out.